Q. Have you ever had the opportunity to talk about Islam to other Jews? A. There is one particular incident that really stands out in my mind when I had the opportunity to discuss Islam with a Jewish gentleman. Dr. Shoraiba from the Islamic Center of New York introduced me to a very special guest. After a Jummah, Friday, prayer, I went to his office to ask a few questions about Islam, but before I could greet him with Assalamu alaikum, I was completely stunned and surprised to see sitting in front of him an ultra-Orthodox Chassidic Jew, wearing payot, a wide-brimmed black hat, a long black silk kaftan and a huge beard. Under his arm was a copy of a Yiddish newspaper, the Daily Forward. He told us that his name was Samuel Kastelwitz and that he worked in New York as a diamond carver. Most of his family, he said, lived in the Chassidic community of Williamsburg in Brooklyn, but he also had many relatives and friends in Israel. Born in a small Romanian town, he fled the Nazi terror with his parents to America just before the outbreak of the Second World War. I asked him what had brought him to the mosque. He told us that he had been afflicted with intolerable pain since the death of his mother 5 years ago. He had tried to find comfort and consolation for his pain in the synagogue, but was unsuccessful when he discovered that many of the Jews, even in Williamsburg's ultra-Orthodox community, were blatant hypocrites. His recent trip to Israel had left him even more deeply disillusioned. He was shocked by the lack of religiosity he found in Israel and told us that almost all the young Sabras, or people born in Israel, were militant atheists. When he saw the large number of pigs on one of the kibbutzim, collective farms, he visited, he could only exclaim in horror. Pigs in a Jewish state. I never thought that was possible until I came here. Then, when I witnessed the brutal treatment of innocent Arabs in Israel, I knew that there was no difference between the Israelis and the Nazis. Never, never in the name of God, could I justify these terrible crimes. So he went to Dr. Shoraiba and told him that he wanted to become a Muslim, but before taking irrevocable steps towards formal conversion, he needed to learn more about Islam. He said that he had bought some books on Arabic grammar from the Orientalia bookstore and was trying to learn Arabic on his own. He apologized to us for his English. Yiddish was his mother tongue and Hebrew his second language. His family and friends speak only Yiddish among themselves. As his English for reading was very poor, he didn't have access to good Islamic literature. However, with the help of a dictionary, he was reading Muhammad Hamidullah's Introduction to Islam with great effort and praised it as the best book he had ever read. In Dr. Shoraiba's presence, I spent another hour with Mr. Kastelwitz, comparing biblical stories of the patriarchs and prophets with their equivalents in the Holy Quran. I highlighted the inconsistencies and interpolations in the Bible, illustrating my point with Noah's alleged drunkenness, David's accusation of adultery and Solomon's accusation of idolatry. God forbid, and how the Holy Quran elevates all these patriarchs to the status of genuine prophets of God and absolves them of all these crimes. I also highlighted why it was Ishmael and not Isaac that God commanded Abraham to offer as a sacrifice. In the Bible, God says to Abraham, "Take now your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering." Ishmael was born 13 years before Isaac, but Jewish biblical commentators explain this by downplaying Ishmael's mother, Hagar, as a mere concubine and not as Abraham's real wife, and thus say that Isaac was the only legitimate son. Islamic traditions, however, elevate Hagar to the status of a full wife, equal to Sarah in every respect. Mr. Kastelwitz expressed his deep gratitude to me for spending so much time explaining these truths to him. To express this gratitude, He insisted on inviting Dr. Shoraiba and me to lunch at the kosher Jewish delicatessen where he always went for lunch. Mr. Kostelwitz told us that he wanted more than anything to embrace Islam, but feared that he wouldn't be able to withstand the persecution he would face from his family and friends. I told him to ask God for help and strength, and he promised to do so. When he left us, I felt privileged to have spoken to such a kind and pleasant person. Q. What impact has Islam had on your life? A. In Islam, my search for absolute values was satisfied. In Islam, I found everything that was true, good, and beautiful, and that gives meaning and direction to human life and death. Whereas in other religions, truth is deformed, distorted, restricted, and fragmented. If someone asks me how I came to know this, I can only reply that my personal experience was enough to convince me. My adherence to the Islamic faith is calm, quiet, but with a very intense conviction. I believe that I have always been a Muslim at heart by temperament, even before I knew that there was such a thing as Islam. My conversion was a formality that didn't involve any radical change in my heart, but made official what I had been thinking and longing for many years.